यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी छोटा करो ना उसको। जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय मृषपाद परमंस परिव्राजगचर्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय मृषपाद परमंस परिव्राजगचर्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्-भागवतम की जय। श्री श्री कृष्ण बलराम की जय। श्री श्री गौरनिताय की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, Devahuti's Lamentation, text number 13. Sarva Kama Dugham Divyam Sarva Kama Dugham Divyam Sarva Kama Dugham Divyam Sarva Ratna Samanvitam Sarvaratna Samanvitam Sarvaratna Samanvitam Sarva Riddhi Upachayodarkam Sarvardhyupachayodarkam Sarvardhyupachayodarkam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Sarvakamadugam Divyam Sarvaratna Samanvitam Sarvardhyupachayodarkam Manistambhair Upaskritam Sarvakamadugam Divyam Sarvaratna Samanvitam Sarvardhyupachayodarkam Manistambhair Upaskritam Sarvakamadugam Divyam Sarvaratna Samanvitam Sarvardhyupachayodarkam Manistambhair Upaskritam. Sarva, all, Kama, desires, Dugham, yielding, Divyam, wonderful, Sarvaratna, all sorts of jewels, Samanvitam, bedecked with, Sarva, all, Riddhi, of wealth, Upachaya, increase, Udarkam, gradual, Money, of precious stones, Stambhaihi, with pillars, Upaskritam, adorned. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. It was a wonderful structure, bedecked with all sorts of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time. Kindly repeat. It was a wonderful structure, bedecked with all sorts of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The castle created in the sky by Kardama Muni may be called a castle in the air, but by his mystic power of yoga, Kardama Muni actually constructed a huge castle in the air. To our feeble imagination, a castle in the sky is an impossibility. But if we scrutinizingly consider the matter, we can understand that it is not impossible at all. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can create so many planets carrying millions of castles in the air, a perfect yogi like Kardama Muni can easily construct one castle in the air. The castle is described as Sarva Kama Dugam, yielding whatever one desired. It was full of jewels. Even the pillars were made of pearls and valuable stones. These valuable jewels and stones were not subject to deterioration, but were everlastingly and increasingly opulent. We sometimes hear of castles thus bedecked on the surface of this earth also. The castles constructed by Lord Krishna for his 16,108 wives were so bedecked with jewels that there was no need of lamplight during the night. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namavo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshraya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminni iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So Karda Muni, in order to satisfy his wife's desire, we are seeing here, he has created a wonderful Vimana. In the previous verse, it is described Kamagam Vimanam. It could move anywhere. It could travel at his will. He did not read any airport clearance and monitoring by radar and have some big company like Boeing or Airbus industry or somebody make an aircraft for him. And that is fitted with various instrumentation which will fail and there will be a crash of the aircraft. None of those things were there. And you needed navigation systems, radars, none of those things were required. Just by his will, the plane would move. What a fantastic airplane. And it was not that the wonderful nature of the plane was limited to be able to move according to Kardama Muni's will. Kardama Muni willed, okay, now let us fly over America, it would fly over there. Now let's go over Russia, it would go over there. Wherever it wanted, he wanted, it would move. But its wonderful nature was not limited to that alone. That itself is very wonderful. In today's verse, it's described Sarva Kama Dugam Divyam. Not only that, it could yield whatever one desired. Anybody who was on that plane, suppose the plane is flying for 24 hours, 48 hours, and suddenly somebody became thirsty and he wanted one watermelon. So on the aircraft, you can't get all those things. They'll give you one Tetra Pak of one artificial drink with some lemon juice or orange juice or something, whatever they have in stock only that they can give. They cannot give whatever you desire. But Kardama Muni's plane was such that whatever one desired on board it, it would immediately fulfill. Sarva Kama Dugam and Divyam. And it was very wonderful because of this. And today's aircraft, if you climb on it, it will be made of aluminum, plastic, and then some fabric. And that's about it. All metal and all base metals. But the materials with which the aircraft of Kardama Muni was constructed was, it was Sarvaratna Samanvitam. It was bedecked with all kinds of valuable jewels. Even the richest men of today cannot think of building a house bedecked with all kinds of jewels. They will put marble, Italian marble, maximum that much they can put. But here we can see it was Sarvaratna Samanvitam. It was bedecked with all sorts of jewels. And not only that, Sarva Riddhi Upajaya Udarkam. Whatever wealth and opulence one could see on that aircraft, what will happen in current day world, anything you take, if you take aircraft also, you have to have constant maintenance, and even after that, after a few years, you have to retire the aircraft. Aircraft will become old, it will become unreliable, you don't want to have accidents, so you have to retire the aircraft. So they will break it down and build a new aircraft. But Karda Mumuni's aircraft, it is Sarva Riddhi Upajaya Udarkam. It was constantly increasing. What was constantly increasing? It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth which tended to increase in the course of time. So the opulence of that aircraft kept on increasing with time. There was no reduction, unlike what we see in this material world. So this kind of opulence, who can imagine to possess? It is, I mean, even the richest of the persons in the world today cannot think of creating something like this. It is impossible to be created. Whereas Karda Mumuni created. That is why in the Srimad-Bhagavatam it is said, Dharmo Madbhakti Krit Prokto. It is said that Dharma means to develop love for Krishna. That is the real Dharma. Any Dharma which does not lead to development of love of Godhead, it is not a real Dharma. Real Dharma means the person who is following the Dharma has to develop love of Godhead. And Jnanam Chaikatmya Darshanam. Jnana, real knowledge, means to be able to differentiate between matter and spirit. Simply acquiring knowledge by which one can maintain one's livelihood is not real knowledge. Unfortunately, in today's world, every university, every school, every college teaches the students how to manage their livelihood, how to earn their livelihood. Whatever skills they are given, ultimately it has to result in placement in some good company. Or the students should be able to have their own startup. Ultimately what? How to earn money, how to maintain your livelihood. This is what is being taught in the educational institutions. And we attach so much importance to these educational institutions. So, however, this kind of education is not real knowledge. Real knowledge is Jnanam Chaikatmya Darshanam. Real knowledge means to be able to distinguish what is matter and what is spirit. This is real knowledge. And not only that, Gunesh Vasango Vairagyam. Vairagya, renunciation, means to be detached from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Not simply to be able to demonstrate or exhibit or show to the world as if I am very renounced, I don't touch money, I don't live in opulent household, I am living in the forest in some hut, or I am living on some tree, on some platform which I have created on a tree. People, when they see this kind of exhibition or this kind of demonstration of renunciation, people think this is real renunciation. But Krishna in the Bhagavatam is saying renunciation is not external. Gunesh Vasango Vairagyam, to be able to really to become detached from the three modes of material nature is real Vairagya. So, if there are many examples of such exhibition of real Vairagya. If you look at Arjuna and the five Pandavas, they were always living in royal luxury, but at heart they were fully renounced personalities. Dhruva Maharaj was another great devotee. He was living as a great king, as a great emperor, but still he was also fully renounced, because they were all beyond the influence of the three modes of material nature. And then finally Krishna says, Aishwaryam Chanimadaya. Real Aishwarya, real opulence, means to possess the Ashta Siddhis, the 8 Siddhis possessed by a yogi, like Karda Mumuni. Karda Mumuni has mastered the 8 Siddhis which are available to Ashtanga yogis. And because of that, although he is living in a forest, he is living in a small hut, when he desired and when he simply by his desiring those Ashta Siddhis, formulated such a wonderful airplane, a palace in the airplane, the palace in the sky, which no emperor of the world can think of building. Nobody can think of building such a palace in the sky, and which will fly at the will of the owner, and which will be bedecked with all kinds of valuable jewels and diamonds and pearls and all that, and whose opulence will keep on increasing with time without any requirement for a huge maintenance team to keep working behind it, and which will yield every desire expressed by the people who are residing with that airplane. So who can imagine building such a wonderful airplane? But Karadama Muni could do it just like this, just by desiring, because he possessed all the opulences of the Ashta Siddhis. Immediately something like this could get manifested. So this is real opulence. Even though Karadama Muni externally was living in a small hermitage in the forest, and he was wearing very simple cloth, maybe cloth made of tree bark and such other things, but still he possessed such opulence simply by the power of his austerities, by the power of his tapasya. So the exhibition, the Karadama Muni, the kind of opulence that Karadama Muni displayed may appear to be it may appear to be unbelievable, that how can we believe that somebody can create something like this? But what we have to understand is that all these Ashta Siddhis, these Siddhis of the yogis, they are coming from Krishna. Krishna is called the Yogeshwara. He is the Ishvara of all yoga. Of all the Siddhis, the owner of all the Siddhis, the master of all the Siddhis is Krishna. So when somebody executes the path of yoga and tries to go back to Godhead, tries to become closer to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what happens is the Lord blesses him with such Yogeshwara, by such Yoga Siddhis. And so therefore, such yogis who have achieved all these Siddhis, they can exhibit such wonderful things. So what is not possible for the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Actually, the Supreme Personality, the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unlimited. It is impossible for anybody to assess or to measure the power of Krishna. We can see one simple example of how so many planets are floating in the sky. Scientists, they give the explanation that there is the force of gravity, and because of that the Earth is going around the sun, the moon is going around the sun, and all of these are maintained in their orbits simply because of the gravitational force. So the gravitational force may be the external reason for the planets to remain in their orbits, but ultimately the planets remaining in their orbits, they are not only going around in their orbits, they are maintaining their position in space. They are not falling down. On this earth itself, this earth also has gravity. If you take two spheres, let us say take one football and one tennis ball, and try to make the tennis ball go around the football, you may be able to do it. But then you try to do that in the air, try to make the football float in there, try to make the tennis ball float in there. Is it possible? Not possible. It will fall down. So a tennis ball and a football are so light, we cannot even suspend them in air. But the Lord is floating such huge planets which possess such immense mass. They are all floating in space, and they are maintaining their position in space. They are not falling down, they are not floating away, they are not dispersing. They are all staying in their places, respective places and respective orbits. So this is possible because of the will of Krishna. So somebody may question that, okay, if God is doing this whole thing, where we can go, we can send a spaceship out in space and see where is God holding up all this. But you cannot see. Nowhere can you see God standing up and holding each of the planets, or holding some thread and keeping it in place. You cannot see. So then where is God? So fact is, reality is, Krishna, simply by his willing, the planets float in the sky. Just like Kardama Muni, just by his will, such a wonderful palace in the sky was created, and it would go wherever he wanted, just by his willing. No navigation system was required, no fuel was required, none of these things were required. Just by his will, it would go wherever it was required. So similarly, the Supreme Lord, simply by his will, he is holding up all the planets in space. And so therefore, even if we send a spacecraft out in space and take photographs and all that, you will not be able to see God standing there and holding up everything. Not required. Simply by his will, everything is happening. And so when we understand, so this simple thing itself is so difficult for people to comprehend, that how such a wonderful feat is achieved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can somebody simply by his willing hold up planets in the sky? How is it possible? I cannot even hold up one tennis ball, even if I do all my gymnastics and use all my physics and science knowledge and all that. I will not be able to hold up even a tennis ball in the air, even for 1 minute. Whereas Krishna, simply by willing, he is holding up all the planets for millions of years. How is this possible? So that is why Lord Brahma in the Srimad-Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, in his prayers to Krishna, one of the things he tells is that Gunatmanastepi Gunan Vimatum Hitavatirnasya Ka Ishare Asya. Ka Ishare. For whom is it possible? Gunan Vimatum. To measure. To Vimatum means to measure. Gunan Vimatum. To measure the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Because Brahmaji is addressing Krishna. He is submitting his prayers to Krishna. So he is saying, Gunan Vimatum Ka Ishare. Who can measure your qualities? Who can measure your glories? So, who is that Krishna? Krishna is Gunatmanaha. He is the overseer. He is the controller of the three modes of material nature. And these three modes of material nature are controlling everyone. From Brahma down to the most insignificant ant, everything, every living object is controlled by the three modes of material nature. And those three modes of material nature are controlled by Krishna. Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad-gita, Maya Dhikshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. Under Krishna's supervision, material nature is performing so many wonderful activities. So nature by itself cannot perform such wonderful activities. Planets floating in the sky, the various seasons coming and going in sequence, rainfall coming at the right time, and in some places you can find snow, in some places you can find deserts. All these wonderful manifestations of material nature, they cannot come about on their own. We are able to see such glorious activities of material nature because Krishna is controlling and Krishna is willing that material nature performs such wonderful acts. So, Gunatmanastepi Gunan Vimatum Hitavatirnasya Ka Ishire. Who can measure your unlimited glories? And he says, Hita Avatirnasya. But still, although you are such a wonderful, glorious, Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose qualities itself people cannot count, you have still Avatirnasya. You have incarnated into this world. You have come to this material world. You are occupying the spiritual world. You have your own planet, Goloka Vrindavan, where you stay. But still you have come. It is unimaginable that you will come down to this material world like this. Just like if there is an emperor who is ruling over the whole earth, and suddenly he decides one day to visit the prison. He wants to visit the jail and look at all the criminals in the jail. So when the criminals hear that the king is coming to the jail, they will all get astonished. Why does the emperor have to come to the jail? And that to our jail. What is the need for him to come? So he is coming not because he is forced to come. He doesn't have to come at all. But he is giving up the opulent residence he has, the opulent palace that he has, and he is coming down to the jail because he wants to express his compassion upon the criminals who are rotting within that jail. So similarly, the Supreme Lord Krishna, he has his supreme abode which is Chinmaya Ananda. It is filled with Chit, Sat, Chit and Ananda. It is filled with eternity, bliss and full of knowledge. And Krishna leaves that and comes to this material world which is full of ignorance and distress. So for what? Hita, for the welfare of all the living entities within this universe. And then Brahmaji says that Kalena Yair Vimatum Sukalpair, by all the scientists, in due course of time, Kalena, in due course of time, they may be able to Vimatum, they may be able to measure. What all they may be able to measure? They may be able to measure many things. Bhupamsavaha Kemihika Dyubhasaha. They may be able to Bhupamsavaha, they may be able to measure the total number of atoms in the universe. Can you imagine to count the number of atoms in the universe? Is it an easy task? But in due course of time, the scientists may be able to count even every single atom within this universe. Not only that, Mihika, they may be able to also count, they may be able to devise an instrument or means by which they can count every single particle in snow. When it snows, the snow gets spread all over the place. You cannot count how many particles are there in that snow, isn't it? So in due course of time, the scientists may be able to devise some instrument, by some equipment by which they may be able to measure each and every particle of snow. They may be able to count the total number of particles in that snow. Not only that, Dyubhasaha, they may be able to count each and every star within the universe. You can see how scientists, they are going on counting and naming different stars, different black holes and all those kind of things. So every other day we keep hearing, oh, some new star has been discovered, some new galaxy has been discovered. So in time, the great astronomers and scientists may be able to count every single star, planet and galaxy within the universe. It may be possible. But still, they will not be able to count the glories and the qualities of Krishna. So that is the glorious position of Krishna. He has such unlimited qualities. So we can understand the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by hearing about the glorious activities of his devotee, Kardamumani. Kardamumani is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is simply a devotee of Krishna. And that devotee is able to exhibit such wonderful opulence of being able to manifest a palace in the sky which can fly wherever he wants at his will, and which is filled with all kinds of precious jewels and diamonds, and which can yield all the desires of its occupants. So such a wonderful palace he can build, a devotee can build. So imagine the master of the devotee, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, what all he can do. So it is impossible to measure the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have to simply understand that he has unlimited glories and he is the greatest personality. In fact, although all the religious scriptures, they describe God as somebody who is the greatest personality. God is very great. God is great. That is what the Christians also say, and even the Muslims also, they say Allahu Akbar, God who is the greatest. Every religion understands that God is the greatest. But how great is he? That if you want to understand, then you have to come to the Bhagavad-gita and the Bhagavatam. It is in the Bhagavad-gita and the Bhagavatam that the glories and the opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are fully described, and where we can develop proper appreciation of the real magnitude of the greatness of Krishna. Otherwise, we can simply do lip service. God is great, God is great. But how great is he? If you want to know, then the Vedic scriptures reveal the real greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, that knowledge, the spiritual knowledge which is given in the scriptures, in the Vedic scriptures, the philosophical knowledge which is the knowledge about the details of the Supreme Personality of Godhead which is given in the Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam is unmatched, it is incomparable. No other scripture in the world can give the kind of detailed information that the Vedic scriptures can give. So that is the unique position of the Srimad-Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad-gita even amongst the Vedic literature. So therefore, if we simply study Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam every day without fail, as it is stated in the Bhagavatam itself, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Every day without fail, if we study Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam, we will be able to develop a proper understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is God, who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who we are and our relationship with Him. And we will, by developing that relationship, we will be able to go back to Godhead and see for ourselves in front of our eyes the glorious activities and the unlimited qualities of Krishna. So this is what is being offered to us by Srila Prabhupada and the Guru Parampara. Therefore, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, reading Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam, we can develop all required information about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and go back to live an eternal life of bliss and joy with Him. So I will stop here. If there are any questions or comments, we can discuss. Yes, Mataji. Can you please ask your question into the mic?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So how to get detached from the three modes of nature?
How to become detached from the three modes of material nature? There are many paths to become detached from the modes of material nature. The general Vedic process is to first engage in Karma Yoga. By following the path of Karma Yoga, gradually we develop detachment and from the material sense gratificatory activities, and gradually we come to the stage of knowledge to be able to discriminate, I am not the body, I am spirit, soul. And by following the path of Jnana, where one renounces all one's material duties and activities, one further develops in that knowledge and comes to the point where he understands that there is Paramatma who is the supreme soul. And then he engages in dhyana, he engages in meditation to be able to search out that supreme soul within the heart. And when he is able to perfect the process of meditation by controlling all his senses, withdrawing all his senses from the external world, and he is able to search out the form of Paramatma within the heart, he realizes that that super soul is Vishnu. And when he understands that Vishnu is the super soul, then he engages in devotional service to that supreme soul, to Krishna. So gradually by this process one gets elevated and one becomes freer and freer from the three modes of material nature. Ultimately, when one becomes a devotee of Krishna and when one becomes liberated from this material world, then he can become completely free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Otherwise, until one comes to the path of Bhakti Yoga, one cannot become free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. That is why Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita that what is that? Mameva ye prapadyante mayametam tarantite. Daivi hiesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Gunamayi maya. The maya which comprises the three modes of material nature, Daivi hiesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. It is impossible to overcome for anybody. Even a Jnana Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, Karma Yogi, nobody can overcome the influence of the three modes of material nature. Mam eva ye prapadyante. Only those people who surrender to me, Krishna says, only those people who surrender to Krishna, maya metam tarantite. They cross over the three modes of material nature. Otherwise it is not possible. So therefore, we can directly take that is why in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna recommends that manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Forget all this jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, karma yoga and all those things. Simply become my devotee, Krishna says. Bhava madbhaktaha. To become devotee of Krishna, directly engage in devotional service to Krishna. That is why Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya. Forget all this karma yoga, dhyana yoga, jnana yoga. So many things I have described to you in these 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. Now I am telling you, forget all that. Forget all that. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vrja. You simply surrender unto me. And aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Don't worry about the three modes of material nature, about the reactions of karma. Don't forget about all that. I will take care of you. I will deliver you from that. So, if we want to become really free from the influence of the three modes of material nature, all that we have to do is take shelter of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada and engage in devotional service directly to Krishna. So, as long as we are engaged in devotional service, as long as we are chanting Hare Krishna, we are reading Bhagavad-gita, Bhagavatam, we are liberated from the influence of the three modes of material nature. So that is why Srila Prabhupada has devised ways and means by which 24 hours we can be immersed in serving Krishna. So in our day, if we fill our day with devotional service, activities revolving around devotional service to Krishna, then as long as we keep executing those services to Krishna, we will remain free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Problem happens when we stop the service and we think, let me take a little break. So that break will break. That will break our spiritual life. That will break our liberation from the three modes of material nature. So a devotee's life is, there is no break in a devotee's life. A devotee has to be engaged 24/7, 7 days a week, 30 days a month, 365 days a year, he is engaged in service to Krishna. And so by that, we can remain constantly above the influence of the three modes of material nature. That's a simple technique. Chant Hare Krishna, read Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam, whenever possible do some service, and if you don't have any service, sit and chant, sit and read Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam. By simply doing this, we can remain above the influence of the three modes of material nature. Is that okay? Yes, please. Satyajit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
This mystic, like Karda Muni, he is exhibiting the mystic power.
Yes.
Being a devotee of the Lord, pure devotee of the Lord. So
Yeah.
mystic power exhibited by the pure devotee and mystic power Siddhi exhibited by normal yogi. What is the difference?
There is no difference. Yoga Siddhi, by the Yoga Siddhi, you can perform any wonderful things. Just like Saubhari Muni. He was a normal yogi. He was an impersonalist. But he was a yogi. And he came out of the ocean after meditating in the ocean, inside the ocean for 60,000 years. He came out of the ocean and he wanted to marry. So when he came, he went to the king Mandhata, I think. He went to him. He approached him and told him, give one daughter. I want to marry. King Mandhata saw him. He was filled with, his body was all filled with weeds and algae because of having lived in that middle of the ocean. His hair was all matted. So he thought, if I tell any of my daughters to marry him, they will all run away. They will all rebel and run away. So what to do? But I cannot say no to him also. He is a great yogi. If I tell no, he will curse me. So he wanted, and the king means he is a diplomat. Diplomatically, he knows how to go through things. So he said, okay, any of my daughters wants to marry you, you marry her. So Saubhari Muni immediately understood, this guy started playing. Who will look at me and want to marry me? I'm so looking so ugly with long beard and matted hair and all body is all covered by algae. So what to do? So using his mystic opulence, he converted himself into a very young, dashing, handsome young prince. And wearing all silk cloth and looking very handsome and youthful and all that. And like that he went in front of all the, King Mandhata had 50 daughters, right? 50. And he went in front of them. And all of them started fighting with each other. I want to marry him, I want to marry him, I want to marry him. And finally all of them married him. So how did he display such opulence? He was not a devotee. Saubhari Muni was not a devotee. So, but then he displayed his Siddhi. That's all. So, anybody who practices Ashtanga Yoga, whether he is a Jnani, whether it is the Jnana Yogi or whether he is a Bhakta, all of them can exhibit similar kind of powers. And actually, if you see, Kardama Muni is not the Ananya Bhakta, that kind of Bhakta, that kind of pure devotee whom we know of in Vrajabhumi. Of course, Kardama Muni is also pure devotee. He had darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But still, he is a Mishra Bhakta. He executed Kriya Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga mixed with the devotional service. He did not execute pure devotional service. He did not execute Ananya Bhakti. There is a difference there. So therefore, when Vishnu appeared before Kardama Muni, what was Kardama Muni's prayer to Vishnu? He wanted something material. He wanted a wife. He wanted a wife who would be suitable to his temperament and who would assist him in his spiritual duties. So it was a material desire. So therefore, he is a Sakama Bhakta. He is Nishkama in the sense that he does not have any material desires. But he executed Mishra Bhakti. He had some material desire. He executed Ashtanga Yoga mixed with devotional service. So he is not a Ananya Bhakta. But at the same time, he had the darshan of Vishnu, so he is a pure devotee also. But the kind of devotional service he executed is not Ananya Bhakti. That's the difference. Whereas, what Prabhupada is giving us is Ananya Bhakti. Pure, exclusive, unalloyed devotional service. These are the words Prabhupada used. Unalloyed, unmotivated devotional service. So that standard of Ananya Bhakti is something else altogether, which even a yogi like Kardama Muni cannot dream of. So we can understand what is it that Prabhupada has given us. Topmost, ultimate. Even a great yogi like Kardama Muni, even he cannot aspire to perform such Ananya Bhakti. Kardama Muni is such a great yogi. He got the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son. And Prabhupada says that, you see Prabhupada's standard of devotional service. Prabhupada says if somebody prays to Krishna to have him as their son, that is also material desire. That is also material desire. One should not desire even that. One should only desire what Krishna desires. Oh Krishna, what is it that you want? I want to fulfill that desire of yours. That is Ananya Bhakti. That standard is completely something else. And that is described in the 10th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam in the lives of all the Vrajavasis. Okay, so that's beside the point. So, but to answer your question, yes, that all the kind of yoga siddhis, even if he is not a devotee, the yogi, if he has acquired all the ashta siddhis, he can display a similar kind of opulence. Not impossible. Is that okay?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, please.
Last question. Now, whenever we inform some problem like planets are not falling down and all those things, the approach of the scientists is always to find out the physical phenomena behind that.
Yes.
They always believe there must be some physical phenomena by which the planets are not floating.
True.
As against you block everything and say there is a God.
No, we are not block everything. We are not blocking everything. We are only saying there may be some physical phenomenon which is causing that phenomenon to happen. So what we have to understand, what we are simply saying is that there is an immediate cause and there will be a remote cause behind it also. Don't limit your search for the cause simply by finding out the immediate cause. We have to find out the remote cause. Just like the example is given, if you look at this building, this hall, this temple hall, it is composed of bricks, cement, sand, water, and some paint, and all these kind of things, isn't it? Some tiles. Now, all these ingredients were there. Now, we can find various phenomena which are responsible for this building to have taken shape. There is the action of cement to become a bonding agent. There is the action of earth and clay and fire being brought together to form a tile. And the paint is again a mixture of chemicals which give a certain color. So you can explain all those phenomena. How cement acts as a bonding agent. When it comes in touch with water, there is an exothermic reaction, and that lime element which is there in the cement, that hardens. There is a chemical reaction that happens, and there is all those. What are those chemicals? What are the chemical reactions that happen? All those things you can explain. So this building having come together can be explained in terms of all those chemicals, processes which are going on in the action of cement and creation of the tiles and all those kind of things. But that is the immediate cause. Remote cause, behind that, there is the mind of an architect. An architect decided that this room should be of this dimension, it should be of this height, it should have tiles of this color, it should have paint of this color. And then based on that, a structural engineer designed this building. And then a contractor, somebody engaged a contractor and paid him money, and he brought all the labor, and then all the objects got together and took the shape that we see it as on today. So now, if you look at this building and you analyze deeply into each and every item of how what is holding this building together, you can come up with all sorts of explanations. But doing all that study, will you be able to determine the mind of the architect? What was the architect's thinking while designing this building? Can you make out? You cannot make out. For that, you have to go to the architect only and ask him. He will tell, Arey Baba, I designed this because the owner wanted like this, so he gave me a mandate. So then I thought of like this, and then I tried various combinations, and finally this is what came out best. And so I designed it like this. So that's a remote cause. That you cannot determine by studying this entire building, no matter what microscope you use, electron microscope, all the greatest advances in science and technology you use and study this, you will never be able to make out the mind of the architect. So in a similar way, the phenomenon which are the laws of nature which are acting as the causes behind various phenomena in material nature, we are not denying that. That is true. They are all true. There is a law of gravity. G is 9.8 newtons meters per second square. It is acting. That is why apple falls down. It doesn't go up. All that we also agree. But then science, what it does is, oh, there is a law of gravitation. G is 9.8 meters per second square. Over. Ends there. So what we say is, no, you go one step beyond that. Question further. Who created the law of gravity? Find out that. So we are simply saying that the remote cause, the cause of all causes, every cause that we see in this material world is itself an effect. What the mistake science does is, okay, there is an effect, there is a phenomenon. What is causing this? They find, oh, there is one ball which is floating in the water, and then they study that and they find out there is the law of buoyancy which is acting, and so they are very happy. We have found the cause. Over. But the nature of this material world is, there is an effect, there is a cause for that effect, and that cause itself is an effect. There is a cause behind that, and that cause again will be an effect. There will be a cause behind that. Like that, if you go on analyzing what is the cause, what is the cause, what is the cause, ultimately you will come to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. Sarva Karana Karanam. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha. Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna is Sarva Karana Karanam. His will is what is making all this phenomena happen. His will is what is making all the causes give rise to their effects. That is what we are saying. We are not denying those phenomena, those laws of material nature, the law of thermodynamics, the law of gravitation, the law of all those laws are true. But they are themselves, they are not absolute causes. They are effects of another cause who is working behind. And so, when we analyze like that, the ultimate cause of all causes is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the contention that we have. Is that okay? So we'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.